Okay, great. So why don't we do a quick lightning round? And I'll start with you, David, and we'll just kind of go down the line. Give the audience a sense of who your consumer is in the context of your business.
A couple of disclaimers first. One, even though we got nominated for the award, we're not actually a lender. So maybe if you want to escort me out or something, we're a technology platform.
Security.
Two, we're a startup, so I don't have data on 100,000 customers.
Do you use Snapchat?
We are looking at that channel for acquisition.
Do you use Snapchat?
Personally, yes.
Yes! One of the three!
Because I have two teenage girls who are all over it, right?
We all have our reasons.
And third, we are raising equity right now in a seed round, and I just want to mention that in case somebody wants to talk to me afterward. It's a tough environment, folks. So we're a consumer enablement company that allows travelers to pay for their travel purchases monthly. Our consumer is pretty much right in the middle of that demographic that you talked about. Her name's Jennifer. She's a 25-year-old Henry, high earning, not rich yet. She has a good job. She spends 5 hours a day on her smartphone. She's heavily influenced and uses social media. She's the first generation that's really going to embrace open banking and what that means for mobility of financial services that she's going to be using. She loves to travel outside of sort of mandatory or necessity expenses. Travel is at the top of her list. Awesome. There's a lot of Jennifers out there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Eva.
Yeah. So Borrowell started out life as a prime online lender, and we transitioned to offer credit scores for free. Our mission is to help people make great decisions about credit. And as Andrew mentioned before, we have 750,000 users. So there's quite a large swath of the Canadian population. Our user typically is average income, average to below average credit, and really wanting to improve. And so a real desire for self-improvement and learning, wanting to be good with money, but maybe not quite there yet.
Awesome.
So my name is Wayne. I'm the CEO of PayBright. We're an instant point-of-sale consumer lender, which is a model that you're probably mostly familiar with. We partner with merchants and allow them to offer installment loans to their customers to pay for the goods or services that they sell. We do that both in-store, and we do that for e-commerce as well. We have about 3,600 merchants that we work with across the country, and we have a little over 100,000 consumers that have borrowed from us as well. In terms of who our consumer is, it's really who our merchants' consumers are. And going back to what Joe was saying about where is the consumer, our business model is all about meeting the consumer where they're making a purchase, they have purchase intent, and helping make that purchase happen for them.
Michael Wendland, CEO of Refresh. We're an alternative provider. Think of us as a bit of a recycling engine for in the B2B and B2C realm of helping consumers ultimately become bankable. So we have a couple of products, a secured Visa card and an installment loan product. And our typical consumer has been declined for credit. We've initiated over 75,000 loans since inception. And typically they're in that 29 to, I'll call it 40-year-old range. And they've basically fucked up before with their credit. And pardon the French. And they need to kind of reprove their creditworthiness. So we help other lenders retain, monetize, and build their core loan products in the long term. And then we help consumers basically move up the credit ladder. So that's a bit about us.
Great. So trust is a pretty big component of, it's a pretty big component of marketing. It's a pretty big component, as we talked about earlier, of what consumers are expecting today in a way that they never had before. And then you layer financial services and you layer credit on top of that, and all of a sudden it becomes, I would think, the North Star. Maybe Eva, did you want to give us some thoughts on how you're thinking about trust and developing the relationship with the consumer?
Yeah, no, I think it was really important for us starting out in 2014, which according to Amar was like what was before skepticism? It was like whatever that was. It was
Obama.
Like. Yeah. We're supposed to be centrist, not far left or far right, right? So Yeah, I think it was like the really early days of fintech and online lending, and so I think building trust was something that we really had to work hard at doing. And one of the things that we did that was really what led to us offering credit scores for free. We needed something that was really compelling in order to draw the customer in and show that we could be trusted, that they could give us information. We would give them a credit score, a credit report, and I think to continue to build that trust over time. So I think for us that was a pretty key thing to do. And then I think it's interesting as well as we sort of like talk about capturing the consumer and different marketing channels for building trust. I think for us and a lot of other sort of online startups, the natural choice is to go to things like Facebook and Google, where it's fairly easy and at the beginning inexpensive to sort of like try out a small amount of marketing budget. But I think the problem with those channels is that they don't necessarily engender trust. So I think it's interesting to think about Snapchat. And we've also experimented with more traditional marketing channels like radio and television as we grew bigger, because we found that those really increased trust from the consumer.
So Michael, you're in a similar, your business is similar insofar as kind of restoring credit for consumers that either needed or had a bad experience. What are some of the things that you're doing from a tactics or technology point of view that signal that your brand can be trusted?
Yeah, so we have a bit of a mantra in our company where we're obviously using technology and experimenting with technology platforms and using sort of machines to deliver a better client experience. But our mantra is that even if we're using a machine, we never want that client to experience or feel like they're being delivered service through a machine. So what we're aiming for is more of I'll call it a relational type experience. So we use artificial intelligence, but we layer onto that relational opportunities, because we think for our segment, trust is earned over time, and the big way of doing that, we use, for example, in our call center, we tag an applicant to an individual relationship manager who then becomes their trusted advisor through the entire ecosystem and experience with Refresh. That way, they can have a one-to-one story experience and build a relationship on a one-to-one basis and build that trust over time that will bode us well in terms of building a better client experience and delivering more service opportunities in the future. So that we use real people, real names. They have relational text messaging, conversational text messaging directly with that relationship manager. So at no point in time do they feel like they're calling into the deep dark web of a call center for Refresh. And so we try and take that relational approach, again, using machines, using text messaging, we're testing video messaging as well. So all of those kind of factors are playing into that, but always trying to keep that human element in the experience as much as possible.
So switching gears to the psyche of the consumer and looking to Wayne and David here, again, sort of similar businesses insofar as providing new and innovative ways to finance expenditures, but probably your consumers, the end consumer, is coming to that experience, that journey, with a different mindset. Wayne, did you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing that we try to remember is that the consumer is not waking up in the morning saying, I really need an installment loan today. They're saying, I need to buy a couch today, or I need my fridge just broke, I need a new fridge, I need a new bike, or I really want to go on a vacation. And so as much as we want to build a brand and have that be sort of a trusted, appreciated, known brand, we have to remember that we are there to enable the customer's desire and our merchants' process, and we are sort of slightly in the background. So that's something that we try to keep in mind in our business.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. As it relates to travel, it's a really different experience. So if anybody's kind of grown up in the Gen X age like me, we kind of created these big behemoths called OTAs. So they're otherwise known as Expedia and Booking and meta search engines like Kayak or Trivago. And what they've given us is ultimate transparency, ultimate configurability, and 700 search results of where we could go now on holiday. my kids who are teenagers would look at that and laugh and say, well, why didn't you click on the consent and permission button that said that you're now supposed to deliver me relevant and personalized content? Because I can't look at 700 different search results. You should know something about me and where I want to go. So the average person does 38 searches before they create a basket and check out in a travel purchase. They go through 3 distinct phases: inspiration or ideation, search, and booking. And if you think a travel consumer is purchasing the same way that a couch purchaser is, where you're sticking a financing option and basically turning it into a payment option at checkout and having any expectation of changing behavior on that, then you're going to be disappointed. So it's really about, yes, we're looking at point of sale financing, but we're really looking at the journey that a consumer undertakes. How do we get away from financing and loans and credit and get into how do we enable you? How do we create more freedom for a generation really that is plugged in all the time, puts a high value on experiences versus stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather travel and experience things than buy my first car or my first condo. So really, I think just a different approach really.
So in the same way that someone doesn't wake up and say, I really need an installment payment system, people aren't thinking about, I need to buy a vacation. I'm in desperate need to buy a vacation.
Yeah. So you take a room full of 100 people and say, who here wants to finance their holiday? And 5 or 10 brave people sort of put their hands up. Who here wants to take a holiday and pay for it over 12 months? You get a completely different answer. Right? Underlying, it's the same plumbing, it's the same thing, but it's really you have to separate the product from the solution to the pain point.
Right. So you're understanding ultimately what the consumer wants to achieve, not necessarily the mechanics and the housekeeping of how they get there.
Correct.
And so then going back to Wayne, you're sort of in understanding the consumer, you have to kind of reach through the retailer, right, to get there. So what are the challenges in that exercise?
Well, you end up with a lot of customization. So we design financing programs to suit each retailer, what it is that they're selling, whether that's a need, whether that's a want. Also, the brand of the retailer and what customer experience they're trying to achieve fits into that as well. So some merchants, a lot of our merchants say this has to be a 0% financing offer. We didn't want there to be any interest on this, no fees, nothing. A very clean offer. Others say, look, we don't have the margins for that, or that's not how we're thinking about this. We need the customer to bear some or all of the cost, and we end up customizing between those two. And they appeal to different segments as well. So we have a lot of people who need a monthly payment to make a purchase, maybe an unplanned purchase, the car broke down, the fridge broke. They're willing to pay some interest. And then we have the 0% offers where any credit score, any segment of the population would take that offer, and in those cases, it's more of an inducement, and that's where the merchant's buying down the rate to create an attractive promotion. So we spend a lot of time playing with those parameters and trying to come up with something that works for each merchant.
What's the craziest thing you've ever seen financed?
We have some pretty weird stuff.
I knew it.
Yeah.
It just looks like he knows some weird stuff, doesn't it?
It totally runs the gamut, but we have like cosmetic procedures sometimes. You get some interesting financing use cases there. Coffee machines, e-bikes, you name it. I'll think about this. I'll come back in a sec if I have any really, really weird ones.
Awesome. So going back to the piece on trust, and turning back to Ava and Michael, I guess the obvious question is, you're spending time building trust and building a relationship. If what I actually want is trust and stability, why would I just not go to my bank?
Yeah, I think hopefully there are things that we're offering that the bank is not. I think one of the things that we're very focused on is very personalized and very easy to understand information about credit. So I don't know that the banks are doing an amazing job of that. I don't think it's their area of focus. And I think the other thing that we offer that may be different from like an individual bank is that we do have a marketplace of products from like 30 plus financial institutions, including most of the big banks, that we can then say, look, we think it's actually this credit card from this this bank that would help you, or this loan from this company, as opposed to I just don't think the banks are going to be offering products from their competitors.
Michael?
Yeah, I think similar to what Ava said, it's I don't know if the banks are altogether they're reacting to solutions and to needs. I think what we're able to do with our platform is really offer a solution in the sense of when that decline experience happens, the consumer is 90% of the time left to figure something out on their own devices, and they'll go online or elsewhere, and instead trying to capture them at that moment of truth when they are declined and they realize, hey, what are my options? Because there's always options. That's what we're trying to kind of provide to consumers in terms of providing that solution right at the point of that interaction.
So you're doing some pretty innovative stuff on the service delivery side. You, if I understand it correctly, you assign a relationship manager to every customer. That relationship manager then essentially, is engaged in one-to-one communication with that consumer. That feels to me, doing that at scale feels to me like something maybe is a bit of a white space left by the banks as they pursue other opportunities or priorities. What are some of the other white spaces, and maybe this is for the whole panel, but what are some of the other white spaces that you think are opportunities to disrupt in either service delivery or marketing execution? That's for everybody. Or what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen financed, right?
Well, I've got one or two. Really quickly, this whole cannabis thing, we're not financing cannabis and our lenders are in the room, don't freak out. But like things like the boxes that you grow your plants in and stuff like that, we've been inundated with those type of companies lately. Most of them we've turned down, but that's happening. And the other thing is furniture rental is this whole new thing that apparently millennials don't want to buy anything, it's all rental. So we have like a bunch of furniture rental companies coming to us right now.
I would say one thing in terms of engagement with customers, what we've seen, so we ran a really big survey in the summer, and we got thousands of Canadian travelers to kind of answer a bunch of fairly targeted questions. And a couple of things kind of came out of that. One, wow, women make the travel decisions. 80% of our respondents were women, and almost to the point where I actually had to go in and try to correct it, and all that happened was my cost per click went up 50% when I did that. So one, my customer is a woman. Two, we started asking around enablement, freedom, and ultimately financing, and I saw perhaps not surprisingly for this room, a pretty big propensity at a younger generation, Gen Z in particular. Unfortunately, unless I send them to Michael, most of them are going to get declined because they have thin files or no files. But a very strong response from millennials down. And then kind of since then, as we've kind of started to operate, what we've seen is that I'm lucky that I have a CTO who's an expert in NLP, in conversational AI. NLP is natural language processing, which is the code behind chat. So we've seen a lot of people, where we're sending out emails and things like that. Here's our phone number, here's our email, chat. It's all chat. Every question that's coming in is chat. So it's interesting to see that and how that people want to engage. I actually got really worried about a week before we're going live is, hey guys, we don't even have a phone. Like we don't have a heart. We don't have, who are we going to call, right? People are old enough, are going to say Ghostbusters, but no, not them. So we had to get a phone, but no one ever calls, right? It's all through Facebook Messenger. It's through our Drift chat on the site. And we're obviously looking at that as an interesting way to engage, but also then you start thinking about marketing, right? Because you think if these people are like to use these kind of platforms to engage, then how do you then flip that around to the top of the funnel in terms of engagement as well?
You look like you have another weird item.
I was just going to make one comment. One of the things that is working well in our business is that a lot of our merchants are way ahead of us in some of this kind of marketing. And so they take our offer of financing, wrap it into their marketing, and then push it out in a really sophisticated way. So we work with the likes of, Wayfair, Casper, and Endy, and they will know more about, digital marketing and these channels than we are going to. So, I got a message the other day from Wayfair saying, hey, we just email blasted 1.3 million Canadians about you guys. Like, oh, thank you very much. And that's just one channel. There's other channels they're driving as well. So that's not something we expected when we got in the e-commerce space, but it's been a great way for us to get that exposure with somebody else's expertise.
Excellent. Maybe we've got 2 minutes left. I'd love to just turn the mic over to the room if anyone has any questions of the panelists, and make sure that we have an opportunity to do that. We practice this. We need to stare blankly at the audience now. All right, well, I'll ask the final question then. Transparency, two-edged sword, right? Particularly in financial services where you've got fees and, we're not necessarily all in this for the good of our health. So is it possible to create long-term customer relationships and grow your business with transparency? Anybody?
I think it is. I think like the consumer is pretty savvy, and if you don't tell them what you're doing, they're going to guess what you're doing, and it's probably going to be actually way worse than what you actually are doing. So I think like one of the questions that we get a lot from like, well, how do you make money? If you're giving our credit scores for free, you must be like selling all of our data. And so I think like it's really important for us to be transparent, because again, I think if you're not, the consumer actually come up with something worse than what you're actually doing. So we're pretty transparent about our business model, and it's on the homepage of our website. So this is how we make our money. Is it really free? Yes, it's really free. It doesn't affect your credit score. We don't ask for a credit card number. And it's when we make a good recommendation and you actually take a product, we get paid a referral fee from the bank or the financial institution. So I think in general, it's positive to be more transparent than less.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, one of the requirements that we have in our process is that a consumer actually speaks with a relationship manager prior to closing of the deal, and that's just to make sure. We obviously use a number of other technologies and signing systems, et cetera, to disclose all the fees and everything. But just to, again, establish that trust, establish that point of contact, and also have a transparent conversation with the individual. I think the more upfront you are at the beginning of the process, you just optimize for a much, much better long-term customer, because you're all aligned and you're understanding what it is and you're understanding what our product isn't, right? So I think it bodes well.
Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there, but I think the key themes are trust and transparency, understanding the modality and the psyche of the consumer and where they are in their decision journey. And I would like to thank my panelists who have been amazing. Thank you. Let's hear it for them, please.